Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Garbaugust 2023. This is a BookTube event created by Ollie at Criminali, designed to celebrate trash. And it's a whale of a time, a huge amount of fun. And there are a whole bunch of prompts, there are a whole bunch of categories and subcategories for trash this year as there were last year. And we also have a Voxer group there's a much larger roster of co-hosts this year who have a Voxer group where we compare notes. And it was only a matter of time, BookTube, until mudslinging started to happen in that Voxer group, until there was a little bit of down and dirty mud fighting between the co-hosts. As your faithful Garbaugust correspondent, I felt it was my duty to apprise you of the state of those behind-the-scenes shenanigans. And the first civil war of Garbaugust has indeed happened. And it involved it involved Jaws. A fracas erupted in the Voxer group where the co-hosts were split right down the middle, meaning everybody else against me, about whether or not, first, the book Jaws, Peter Benchley's 1974 debut novel, qualifies as trash, and, inevitably, whether or not it's better than the Spielberg movie. I faced opposition and catcalling and insults about my hair, but I prevailed. At least I think I did. It counts as prevailing if you stop listening, right? Doesn't it? Or is that just in America? But I wanted to talk about this a little today since, of course, it touches on trash. One of our category descriptors for trash is, does it involve a killer animal? And does it have a killer animal on the cover? And does it have a naked woman on the cover? This is not the original cover for Jaws, but this has become absolutely immortal when it comes to book cover designs. This was the movie poster for Jaws, and is one of the most successful and instantly recognizable and much lampooned and parodied movie posters of all time. Jaws has those things. But I want to make a case here for Garbaugust before I get down to text. Before I start talking about trash that I am reading, I want to talk about trash that I'm not reading. And Jaws, the novel by Peter Benchley, is not trash. Yes, it has some of the outward signifiers of trash. It has a naked woman on the cover. It has a giant killer animal on the cover. And it is a giant killer animal is a part of the plot. The plot is that Amity Island is suddenly plagued by a killer shark that attacks people and refuses to move on. It doesn't move on, and it doesn't seem content with seals or other forms of marine life. It seems to want to kill humans. Benchley drew his original inspiration from a series of shark attacks on the Jersey Shore half a century before he wrote this book. But he did a lot of research, too, to try and make his shark as accurate as possible for the time. For 1974. This novel was hugely successful long before there was a movie. The movie made it stratospherically successful. But I want to argue, as I did in that doomed Voxer argument, that mudslinging episode that we had, that Jaws the novel is better than the book. It's not trash, and it's better that the book is better than the movie. In the movie, you have a peaceful island with a whole bunch of aw shucks peaceful people that is attacked by a giant killer shark. It takes a while for Police Chief Brody to figure out what it is. He enlists the aid of a shark specialist named Matt Hooper, who determines that this is a great white shark and that it's here in the waters off Amity Island and seems to have staked out some sort of territorial claim, and that if you let people swim in the ocean, it's going to eat them. Hooper is from money, and he very much wants to know more about this shark. He is a shark specialist. He wants to get into a diving cage and find it. But the people of Amity Island want it dead. So they hire a commercial fisherman and maybe a rule breaker named Quint to go and kill the shark. Now, all of you who know the movie, all of you do. And in the movie, Robert Shaw gives an immortal performance as Quint. And Quint and Brody and Harper go out to find the shark. And they do. In a very famous scene, they find the shark. And Mr. Hooper still wants to go into the water in a cage. You go into the cage goes into the water. You go into the water. Shark in the water. Uh, he wants to see this thing, and he's hoping to kill it peacefully with a poison dart. And it sneaks up on him, and he loses his chance to do that. It almost kills him, but he swims to the bottom, and it is too preoccupied with attacking the ship. And it famously kills Quinn, and it's about to kill Brody when he kills it. And then Hooper resurfaces, and the two of them swim back to shore. And the final scene is an incredible long shot of the two of them coming out of the surf on Amity Island. But before that, we see them paddling away. They've got a crude makeshift flotation device, and they're paddling away as all sorts of seabirds are gathering to feast on the remains of the shark. And Brody says, I used to be afraid of sharks. Can't imagine why. That's a wonderful bit of dialogue. It's not in the book, but that's it for the movie. In the movie, a town is beset by a weird, almost supernatural giant killer animal. No explanation is given. This is not how great white sharks usually behave. No explanation is given, and no motivation is given. Quint hates sharks. I guess that's all we're supposed to know of his own motivation. He has a great speech about being on the USS Indianapolis when it was torpedoed and how he dealt with a nightmare of shark attacks until he was rescued. But he's not out there as an Ahab to this thing. We don't know what his motivation is. Brody obviously wants to catch this thing, kill it, to get law and order back on the island, to make Amity a peaceful place again. And Hooper wants to study the thing. But that's it. That's all that happens, is that a shark attacks a town, and 3 guys go out to do something about it. I'm not denying that the movie is effective. The movie is pretty effective. It's very much a Spielberg production. It's not as bad as his productions get. They're very effective even later on, but they're very hammy and manipulative. They're very Rube Goldberg-y. This one is less so than almost all the others. I think that's one of the reasons why it gets so hugely overpraised by movie fans. Another reason might be that a lot of those movie fans are getting a little old. I've often found that will color the movie estimations of older critics, is that they will look at things that remind them of when they had hair and suddenly say those things are great. The movie has very effective moments, but there's so much more going on in the book. The book is not, in other words, just the story of a giant killer animal attacking a seaside town. That's all the story of Jaws, the movie. The book has much more than that going on. In the book, the giant killer shark, the Jaws of the title, is multi-layered. There are many predators in the book. The fish, the giant fish, Benchley always calls it a fish in the book. The fish is just one of them. And it's not just a question. Hooper is very different in the book. He is young and ardent to study the shark, but he's also a little bit ardent to get inside the pants of Mrs. Brody. So he's a predator, and he suffers accordingly in the book, unlike in the movie. He's a predator. He is Jaws. And in addition to that, Amity is being chewed between the jaws of organized crime, an element that's completely missing from the movie. But slowly, but surely, those jaws are closing in on the town. Brody feels that too. He senses that something's not right with his wife, and he knows that the mob is moving in on Amity, and he doesn't like any of this. In an odd way, in the book, the shark is like an outward manifestation of the inner essence of those things. In fact, there's an amazing moment in the book. It's my favorite moment in the book, where Brody looks out to sea and realizes that a simple dumb animal that has no evil intent at all is what's causing all of this chaos. And of course, he's not right about that. He is oversimplifying. That the shark is not connected with the mob, and the mob isn't going anywhere. They're in Jaws 2, the book, Jaws 2. They're not in Jaws 2, the movie. And likewise, the creeping issues of marital problems are not done with in this book. That's a warplane traveling only 100 feet above the treetops. Okay. Must be trouble on the border. And we're about to get a siren. I'll be done in a minute because I didn't want this to be long. This is just what I suspect will be the first episode of mudslinging that's coming in Garbaugust, because when is it ever going to happen otherwise, right? In an event at Book 2 dedicated to garbage, that's when you're going to find co-hosts yelling at each other on their front lawns in their underwear. You're going to find that happening on Garbaugust. So the whole disagreement this time around is that my co-hosts are wrong when they say that Jaws the movie is better than Jaws the book. Jaws the book has more for you to think about, more for you to chew on than Jaws the movie does, as effective and entertaining as the movie is. And since I don't want to confine our mud wrestling just to the co-hosts of Garbaugust, I'm happy to throw the question open to you. How many of you have read the book and also seen the movie? I would guess that a good 80% of you have never read the book. You know the movie. Everybody knows the movie. Is there anybody out there, just for this mudslinging episode, is there anybody out there who has never seen the movie? And is there anybody out there, anybody at all, anybody from here all the way to Alpha Centauri, that agrees with me that the book is better? I would love to hear from you if that's true. I would love to hear from you if you agree with me that there's more going on and more effectively done in the novel than there is in the movie. There are also a couple of things in the novel that don't happen in the movie that the movie could have done, or maybe couldn't have done, that I think are very effective. I've mentioned one on this channel before. At the very beginning, when the young woman is swimming in the dark before dawn, she's going to be our first fatality. And in the movie, there's that iconic scene where she is pulled underwater, then she comes up again, she knows she's being attacked, and the shark drags her all around and destroys her. Pulls her under finally and destroys her. It's a very effective scene. And in the book, I think it's a little more chilling in a way that it would be very hard for you to duplicate in a movie. In the book, she's swimming in the water. No idea what would possess anyone to swim in the ocean, much less to swim in the ocean at night. But she's swimming in the water, and the shark, which is 20 feet long, rockets past her, underneath her, 10 or 15 feet below her. All of its sensory organs are turned on her, but it doesn't need to be standing near her. It doesn't need to be coming up to the surface. It swims underneath her quickly, scanning her to see what kind of prey she is. And in the book, the passage of the great fish lifts her up in the water and then lowers her back down. And she isn't, there are minor swells. It's a very, very calm body of water. So there are minor swells. She's not thinking about it, but we are. That's an uncanny moment in the novel. Has a way about it that's intensely creepy. That she isn't, her first contact, so to speak, with this great fish is not it biting her. If she had a little bit more awareness, or was a little bit more suspicious of what was going on, she might think that was unnatural. I wonder what caused that to happen. And I don't know that you could accurately duplicate that in a movie. And there's another thing in the book that doesn't happen in the movie. In the movie, the shark rears up out of the water. That's the famous scene where Brody says you're going to need a bigger boat. In the book, the shark spy hops. It sticks its head up out of the water and looks at them. So it's not swimming by, it's not making a dramatic entrance. You'd be scanning the horizon, then suddenly you see this thing that looks like a giant rock because it's so big. I think that properly filmed, that would be more effective than the shark rearing up out of the water while Brody is chumming. I think that would be more effective. And you could still have the famous scene where it swims by the boat, and Hooper says 20 feet, and Quint says 25. And also at the very end of Jaws, the ship is going down, and Brody is in the water, and this enormous shark, shovel-shaped head with a fin behind it, is slowly encroaching on him to the point where he's panicked. But the shark is already dead. It's just drifting towards him. I think, again, if that were filmed correctly, that would be really, really exciting. Really, really effective. At least as much as... You're never going to get Spielberg to turn down an explosion. It's never going to happen. So Jaws has its own ending. But I wanted to put in my 2 cents worth here. Since we're going to be arguing about trash for the whole month of August, I wanted to put in my 2 cents worth and say what I'm sure all of you knew ahead of time, which is that all of my Garbaugust co-hosts are all wrong and I am right when it comes to this subject. But I want to hear from you. We might as well, if we're going to start flinging mud, it might as well get on all of us. If you've read Jaws and seen the movie, which do you prefer? I'd love to hear that. And if you have never read the book, I'd love to know that. And if you've never seen the movie, well, I'd love to know that too. So feel free to sound off on this subject. And the next time mud starts to fly in the Voxer discussion, I will dutifully report it. Thank you, BookTube.